Hello, hello, hello. It's Jody from Life by Design, and welcome for today's episode where we're going to go over a really cool craft for weddings. So we have here this beautiful bridal wedding favor that holds a lollipop, and you can add the bride and groom's name, just put a little attachment on the bottom, or you can add it, print it onto the back. So a lot of great ideas. Some really fun things you can do with this. This, first of all, was made after some of the vine patterns in my own daughter's wedding dress, and so we use these as favors for her bridal shower, and everybody loved them. They were a hit. You can add some really cool things like tulle to add a veil to this, different colored lollipops that match it. You can make different bridesmaids, match it with bridesmaids favors as well. They come with two different hairstyles, and you can make the hairstyles in different colors, add a little fun to this. It looks like a little Irish girl. You can also change the skin color, dress color, and even make the whole bridal party. But best of all is that it can be used for more than just weddings. Add some sparkle and pizzazz to make them for birthdays, holidays, or for gifts. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. All right, so to get started here, we have our little sample that I showed you earlier, and I'm going to lay out all the pieces to this template so you can see what we have. We have, of course, our lollipop. Now, this is the base of the dress that we're going to fold, and here is the decorative lace that's going to go on top of the base. We also have the hairstyles that come with it, the front and the back. These are the front, and here's the back of the hairstyle. I only have one body cut out because the other body is on the sample, but you can see it has the hair outline attached to it already. So you're going to know which hairstyle goes with which body. The hair will fit flush around the head perfectly, so you're not going to see any of the pieces hanging off. It fits like a nice puzzle piece. And then we have the bodice of the dress. This is an important piece because it allows the arms to stick out while covering the body behind the dress. We also have the insert. This is another important piece that you don't want to leave out. And here's why. Let me just show you now. The insert really holds this together. It not only provides a sturdy structure, but it helps the lollipop stand up. The hole in the dress is pretty high, but you want it that because it's in proportion to the dress. So when you use the insert, it holds the lollipop up higher and keeps it from wiggling back and forth. Now, if the lollipop is just put through the hole in the bottom of the base of the dress, it can flip-flop all over the place. So this insert is an important piece to not leave out because it's going to keep it from doing that. Okay, now we also have some choices for the flowers that you want to put together. So first we have our little lily blossom, or you also have this nice flower bouquet. Later, I'll show you how to assemble each of these. Oh, and you need your Velcro. Don't leave this out. It's critical to keep the dress shut, and I think it just gives a little more polished look. So before we get started, let's look at a couple of tools that we will need. I like to use liquid glue. The right kind of glue is really important for this type of project, and it makes all the difference. And I really like this art glitter glue, but there are other good glues out there on the market. So another tool I use that is really helpful is this jewel picker. It easily picks up any of the tiny flower pieces and puts them in place. Now, having a pair of tweezers is also helpful to use for tiny pieces, but this jewel picker is inexpensive and it really works great. If you're going to do a lot of these, I highly recommend getting one. It will make assembly so much faster. But let's get started with assembling the dress. So the first thing we're going to do is fold the base. So in the middle of the base, you're going to see the score lines. Even if you chose to use the file with no score lines, and you're going to see little cut slashes that will also help you fold. Either method will both make it easier to fold. So now I'm just going to get a little scraper tool, and I'm going to hold it along the score line and bend the dress over and then use the scraper to give it a nice, real sharp fold line. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. I like to put the scraper tool against the score line and give it a real clean fold. And then once we fold that a little bit more, I'll run over it to give it a sharp crease. Okay, so we have this folded and ready to go. Next, we'll flip it over and make sure you have the front side with the hole facing up. This is where the lollipop will go. Now we're going to glue the lace and place it directly on here. So let's get our glue, and we're going to set the dress aside for a minute. So for the lace part, I like to use shimmer paper. The shimmer paper really comes out with clean cuts. You could see there's no tearing and pulling on this design, but sometimes your paper may tear with intricate cuts, and there are a few reasons why. First of all, you need to first make sure you have a clean, sharp blade with nothing stuck to it, like vinyl. So if the paper is tearing, first check the blade. Second, make sure you have a pretty sticky mat. Any slipping can cause the paper to tear while cutting. And finally, if it's still tearing, then it may be your paper. Some papers just have a lot of fibers that don't cut intricate designs well. So I like to use shimmer and pearlescent papers because they have a lot of plasticity to it that keeps it from tearing easily. They're my go-to for intricate cuts, and I rarely have issues. So anyway, I'm going to turn this over and make sure my shimmer side is facing down when I glue. Let me grab my glue and unclog the top. I like to keep a thumbtack or a pin around to poke the nozzle and remove any clogs. So I'm going to start by adding glue to the sleeves and then working my way down. You don't have to put the glue everywhere, but make sure to get it on the outside and then around the larger areas. So I'm not gluing everything. I'm going to kind of like dot and dash, I like to call it, around some of the areas. So around the little circle, I'm like dashing and dotting, as you might call it, and you want to work pretty quickly because the glue will start to dry. Try not to glob it on. Now, at the bottom, this little section we're going to keep clean because it will fold over the base. So I don't want to glue any of that area. So right where it starts to curve around this one section at the bottom, I'm going to keep that unglued, keep it open. However, I'm going to glue the leaves and the flowers above that area so it still stays secure. And you can see I'm not taking a lot of time to be perfect on this. I just want it to stay secure, but I'm not gluing every little single area. Okay, so now where the curve is, I'm going to glue the outside of the flower, and I'm just going to put some dots on there. Okay, now I've got all the glue on, so I'm going to use my glue bottle and try to lift this up, lift up the dress so that I can grab underneath. Let's bring the base over and I'll lay this on top. I'm holding the bottom of the dress because there's no glue down there. And what I'm going to do is match up the sleeves. I'll start with the first sleeve and then match up the other sleeve and slowly lay it down. If you line up the sleeves and then the bodice, the rest should fall into place. But if you're using liquid glue, it's going to give you a little leeway, so you have a minute or so to be able to slide it around if you need to get it into place. If you turn it over, it should fit perfectly. You shouldn't see any of the edges sticking out. And this shimmer paper is really good in case you use a little too much glue. It dries clear and doesn't harm the look of it. All right, now the reason we did not glue the bottom is because you can see when it is folded, it will stick out over the fold in the base. But you still want that beautiful little curve of the dress down below there to stick out. So once the dress is finished, our next step is to put the body together. So you will have a couple of different choices for the body and hair. Earlier I showed you the sample of the ponytail that I made. So now I'm using the long brown hair. You can make the hair color anything you want it to be. So I'm actually going to just cut the long hair out to make it easier to transfer. Let's put these two aside before we put on the hair. Now before we add the hair, it's important to get the dress set up because we want the hair to go on top of the bodice. Okay, now in order to do this correctly, I need to make sure that the body is facing the correct direction. So I'm going to line this up. And first I notice where the part in her hair is. I want to make sure that the part is on the same side, so I'm just going to lay the body down on top of the hair and make sure it's matching properly. All right, now that I know that this is in the correct direction, let's put the clothes on the body and then the hair before we add the body to the dress. I'll set the dress aside for now. When we're attaching this, it should fit directly into the pointed area of the body. They should line up nicely, but there's a little leeway so that the body won't poke through. So let's add some glue to this. When you turn the body over, you will see that the dress is slightly sticking out from the back. You're able to see it. And this is just to make sure that the body doesn't peek through the front of the dress in case you don't put it on perfectly. But what I'm going to do is lay this down and line it up at the point, with the point at the bottom, and I'm going to make sure her chest area just cups around it and the sleeves fall into place. Let me flip it over and just wiggle it around to get it so that it looks like it's fitting properly. Using liquid glue really helps to do this. Now the sleeves will stick out slightly, but they're going to attach to the other sleeves on the dress base, so I'm not worried about that. All right, looks good. Now before we put it onto the rest of the body, we're going to put the front of her hair on. And one of the tricks I found when adding hair is to use vinyl instead of paper. Vinyl really helps to make this process easier. And I love to use vinyl and paper together. First of all, vinyl can easily cut very intricate and tiny lines that would normally tear paper. These hairstyles have some intricate cuts that paper may not be able to cut well. For instance, the area around her chin has a very thin line that can easily tear off, but the vinyl cuts it well with no problems. I really like the chin area because it defines the difference between the neck and the face, so it's really important for me to keep that. And this is where vinyl comes in. All right, I'm going to just take a piece of transfer paper like this, and sorry, I reuse these pieces over and over and over until I can't use it anymore, so that's why it looks a little raggedy. So I'm just going to lay this right over the hair piece and burnish it with a scraper tool. Now I'm going to pull this off. It comes off fairly nice and easy. So I'm going to lay this on top of the body. Now let me turn it to the side so that it helps me line this up to the crease at the top of the head. It should fit perfect where you won't see anything poking through. And I'm going to commit to this and lay it down. Now, let's get our scraper tool, burnish this again so it sticks, and gently peel this up. And it's perfect. All right, let me put the transfer tape aside because we're going to use it again. Looks great, so the hair is on top of the dress. I can slightly see a little tiny hair poking through the back, but that's okay. It's meant to fit perfect, but we're humans and don't always get things perfect. Anyway, her hair should not be sticking out in any area, so we are good. All right, now, before I put the back of her hair on, let's first glue the body onto the dress base. If I put the back of her hair on first, then it will be hidden on the dress base. So let's do this last. You don't have to worry about this with the ponytail because the hair sweeps over the shoulder and it never touches the back. All right, when gluing the body on, it comes out better if you put the glue on the dress instead of the back because it's very easy to over glue. Add glue to the sleeves, chest, and bodice of the dress, and then lay it down and hold it in place for a second. Now I used too much glue, so I'm just going to dab some of this off with a tissue, just so my hands don't get all sticky. Okay, so I still have plenty of glue on here, and I'll turn this over and I'm going to match up the sleeves. I like to do this sideways so I could see it a little bit better. So I'm matching one sleeve up and matching the bottom and then the other sleeve. And I'm going to tilt this. So what I love about using liquid glue is that it gives me just a little bit of time to where I can slide things around if I didn't lay it perfect. All right, so now we're ready to flip this over and do the hair on the back. So once again, I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to use my transfer tape and I'll lay it down, use my scraper tool to burnish it, lift it up, and again, put this dress sideways. I'm going to add this to the back and line up that little part the best as I can. Okay, I'm committing. Going to scrape this. Now, one of the cons about using vinyl versus paper is that you have dimension in your paper, and when you put vinyl on top, sometimes you're going to see the lumps or the creases because the vinyl is so thin. And I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but you get a little crease or fold over that. So that's the negative of vinyl. Now, you can also use paper on the back and vinyl on the front because I'm not seeing as much of an issue on the front, but the paper is pretty thick on the back. Okay, so if that's an issue for you, you can stick with paper because you won't have that problem. All right, so our bride part is done. Love it. She looks so pretty. What we're going to do next is glue the insert inside the dress base, and then we're going to work on the flowers. And while the insert is drying, then we can get the flowers ready to go. So the insert is super important, as I said earlier. So let me just show you what it should look like. So first, when it goes in here, it's going to be folded in the middle section will be facing up. It's going to lay in here and stand up. So let me walk you through it. The first thing you're going to do is fold where your score lines are and use your scraper tool to get a really sharp fold. Now do the same on the other side. And then you're just going to glue one side down. So add glue to the one side of this and lay this down to where the edge is flush against the score line of the dress base. Now I'm going to flip this over. This is where we glued. I'm laying it down flush to where the score line fold is. Now, one thing to do before it dries is I'm going to face it towards me and lay the insert back because I want to make sure that the holes are lined up for the lollipop to be in the right place. So I'm going to lay the lollipop stick on it. It probably just needs to move over just a hair to the right. And then you just want to make sure that the holes are lined up properly so that the stick will fit easily through. Okay, so it looks good. Happy with that. This is nice and secure and it's stuck pretty quickly. Now you can see the middle of the insert should stand up, and this will make the dress base sturdy. So let's glue the other side to this. This side needs to lay flush against the other crease where the score line is. I'm going to lay it flat and then fold it over. All right, so it doesn't want to stay. So what I'm going to do is stand it straight up and then stick my fingers in here into the holes on the side and flatten it to the score line. And what I like to do is use, sometimes you put something inside of it to secure it, like a pen. You can use your fingers. My fingers don't often fit too well, so I'm just going to hold it a minute until it sticks. Okay, and just hold it. Put your fingers there. Now we're going to set this aside, and while she's sitting drying, we're going to work on the flowers. Now I like this lily blossom flower a lot, and what I do is if I want to make some bridesmaids dresses, I'll show you some sample bridesmaids. Here's a sample. Anyway, I like to do the flower bouquets with the bridesmaids and then use the lilies with the bride. But it's up to you, whatever you want to do. All right. But I'm going to show you how to do both of these flowers. So let's get our flowers out here. I'm just going to dump them all out. And you want to make sure, first of all, that your flowers are all facing up on the correct side if you're using any kind of special paper like this shimmer paper. So I want my shimmer side to be showing. Now, for the lily blossom, the correct way is to have the bottom stem curving towards the left. However, if you're not using special paper, then it really doesn't matter which way it faces, because I have special paper that I'm using. I want to curve my lily so that the stem goes off to my left as it's facing me. Okay, I'm first going to line all of my little blossoms up and get them in place where they'll be glued, and make sure that they're sitting in the proper way. So for the bouquet, they're all going to go from small to large. So I'm just going to grab the pieces I want to use, and you can use as many or few pieces as you want. So I have 3 pieces here, but if you don't want to use all 3, you can use 2, you can use just 1, whatever you want. There's actually 4 pieces to the bouquet, but if you're making a lot of these, then you may want to use fewer flower pieces. Now, what I'm going to do is grab my jewel picker, and I'm going to use the tweezers also to make it easier and faster. What I'm going to do is put a little glab of glue on the blossoms. You can spread it out if you want, or just put a dot. It's going to stick either way. Now I'm going to take my jewel picker, and I have them all in the position I want, and pick it up, pop it down, set it in place, repeat. This is how easy it is when using the jewel picker. While these pieces aren't super small and you could probably pick them up with your fingers, you still may be struggling a little bit if you're doing a lot of these, especially if you have fumble fingers like me. And again, I made like 100 of these for my daughter's shower, so the jewel picker was a game changer. Now this is ready, and I'm going to place this on the bride by adding a little glue to her hands and placing the leaves over her hands. So let's work on the bouquet. Now you can leave your flowers for the bouquet flat, but to give it a little more dimension, we can do some paper curling. In order to do that, they make a special tool just for this. So here are some sample tools. It basically has different size metal balls on the ends. However, you don't have to go out and buy a paper curling tool. You can use the back of a pen or whatever item you have around that maybe has a little bit of a rounded edge to it, and that will work the same. All right, so the ends of these tools have different sizes. With a larger flower, you want to use a larger curling tool, and you just put it in your palm of your hand, and then you can like close your palm a little bit and roll the tool around the flower. And you can see this just makes it stick up and curl. You can use the smaller size if you want to get it a little more indented. And another thing you could do is take a pointed tool or a skewer and curl the tips of the petals the opposite way to flare out opposite and create an open blossom effect. All right, so these are just some of your options to make these flowers beautiful for your bride. And again, if you're doing 100 of these, you're probably not going to want to take the time to do all of this. You can just use the bottom of a rounded instrument like a pen, and it'll make it pop out the same way. All right, now I'm going to quickly put this together. Just put a little dot of glue on each of these. And because I did a dot already on this flower, I'm not going to use my jewel picker. I'm I'm going to use the tweezers and put the small flower on top of the bare one. When I put the bouquet in here, I'm going to make sure that each petal on top goes between two of the petals beneath it so that it gives it dimension. And I'm just going to drop it in there, push it down with the tweezers, and now I'll use my jewel picker for the next one. And again, I want to make sure the top petal goes in between the bottom petals. Now I'll put one more drop of glue in there and place this last piece. So if I'm doing multiple bouquets, then what I'm going to do is have all my flowers set up ahead of time, and I'll do all the flowers at once. That way they're ready to go on top of the bride, and it makes it much faster. You can see that you can have a nice bouquet, or you can use the lily blossom. Now, I've been really into these lily blossoms lately, so I'm going to use this one for the bride, and I'm just going to put some glue on her hands, and I probably used a little too much glue, so let me wipe some of that off. Okay, now I'll just lay this where the leaves will fit over her hands. I'm going to set this aside to dry, but in the meantime, the last thing we're going to do is put our lollipop in there. Your lollipop will stick through both holes and fit perfectly. Now the last thing will be to put our Velcro on here. Okay, the Velcro is important. I say please don't leave this out because it just gives it that little professional look. It seals it nicely and makes it look a little more polished. So what I'm doing with the Velcro is I put it together first. That way when I line it up, it will stay properly sealed. All right, so I'm laying it right on top here. I keep getting these pieces of glue on here, but I'm laying this right where her chest is, and then I'm going to line up the sleeves and press it together. All right, that way when I undo this, the Velcro is going to stay where it needs to stay. Now, unfortunately, the Velcro is on her hair, but you're not going to see it when it is closed. The back is going to look like that. And you won't have that problem if you are using the ponytail hairstyle. Now you are ready to put the lollipop in there. It should fit nice and straight through both holes, and then you're going to close the Velcro back up so that the sleeves line up properly. And here we have our bride holding her flowers and the lollipop in there. And you can switch out with other lollipops, whatever you want to use. You could use different color lollipops. So if you don't want white, you can use the color of your wedding theme. I have a sample green dress, although their wedding was a softer mint green, but you can see putting a different colored lollipop in there gives it a little pizzazz. I really like that, and it just gives it a little contrast as well. So whatever you do, you have choices. Even the black and white is really, really sharp for a black tie event. You can get these flat lollipops at Party City or probably even on Amazon. Now, if you like this bride lollipop, please check out our other tutorial and template for the tux lollipop. They just look so fabulous together as favors for your wedding when you put them together. The tux also has 2 different hairstyles and 2 different faces for the guys. You can mix and match them up with different hair colors, different skin colors, different colored outfits. You can even use these for other party events like birthdays, sweet 16, prom, bachelorette parties, and they're great gifts. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial and you make some of these adorable crafts for your fabulous upcoming event where you can give these out as favors. All right, enjoy making these and see you next time.